we're live now. So for anyone who just started watching, I just had to cut Angela off at this, like, really, if she would have said this live, it would have been like super, super embarrassing. She's talking about a time when she was at Second City and she almost said a word that wouldn't have been great for her.
Not for the very first, like, okay, and now we're live, and here's this sentence. Maybe a little bit later I'll tell that story. If someone like chats in, like, please tell us that story, I'll tell it at the end. By request only. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'll trim it off with it when it goes to print. So welcome to Progressive HR Live. Happy 2021, everybody. Yay!
We made it.
We are here with our first live of 2021, the fabulous Angela Nino, CFI. And we'll let you know what CFI means a little bit later. I always think like CSI, like crime scene investigator. It's close, but the F is changed for the S. Anyway, I digress. So Angela Nino, CFI of Empathic Workplace, which I will let you, Angela, tell a little bit about Empathic Workplace a little bit farther on. But before we get into all that, I want to know, like, for our guests, what is improv? Why do we care?
Sure. So I appreciate you asking me this, because I feel like television, or like the comments that people make about improv, like on TV, give it such a bad rap. And I get it, because I think that anyone who's been to an improv show may have also been to a bad improv show. And that's what people think of when they think improv. And improv, for me, has been a series of games that help me to be that performer. And improv is about being in the moment. It's about, in the moment, coming up with things. But the thing is like, people think that you have to just like be funny, and that's what improv is about. It's about playing it real and finding the humor in reality. And that's to me what improv is. Okay, so why do we have to care? Well, I mean, we're always improvising. I mean, life doesn't come with a script. And so improv is a way to practice life skills in a really low stakes environment. And it is just a game. And to help us practice in that low stakes environment, things that we might want to try out, a new emotion, a new way to respond to something. And the way that we show up in improv is the way that we show up in life. So if an improv game goes weird, chances are if we tried that same approach in a business meeting, it would probably be weird there too. So it teaches us how to communicate and how to do it well.
Awesome. Thank you. I know I started my improv journey a few years ago. I'm only level 1. I say only level 1, but I'm obviously higher than that. Like, I only got past level 1. But Angela is Second City trained. For those that don't know, Second City, that's in Chicago. And that's where like all the SNL greats come from. So Chris Farley, and there's more. So who else is trained at Second City?
Tina Fey, Edie Bryant, Bill Murray. I mean, for the past like 50 years, a third of the cast of Saturday Night Live typically comes from Second City. Now, I've only been through the training center. I have not performed on the main stage. Well, I did like a student show on the main stage, but I'm not like a main stage actress.
You are in my life. You are in my life.
And the reason I say this is because I have so much respect for those who have performed on the main stage. It is such an accomplishment. So maybe someday. Not this week.
Not this week. No. Maybe when in 2022, when everything is over, you're going to get up on there. Yeah. So let's go to our audience real quick and see who's joining us. I know we've got a few people on the live right now. Gary. Hi, hey. Gary from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, I believe, is joining us. He says hello and happy 2021 to everybody. Thank you, Gary. And I do believe David McLean was also on the live for a bit there. He said, excellent, Corrine and Angela. Happy 2021. If you're just joining now, this is Progressive HR Live. We're talking with Angela Nino, CFI of Empathic Workplace. We're going to be talking about virtual improv. So who are you? Where are you joining from? Let us know. We'd like to hear from you. So back to our banners here. This is a question for our audience. What is your favorite improv game? I know some people watch improv. They have like Whose Line Is It Anyway? There's Comedy Sports. There's Second City. let us know what's your favorite improv game. Angela, what's your favorite improv game?
Okay, so it's kind of a joke with our sister company, the Improv Therapy Group. We teach therapists how to use improv in their practices, and every week it's like a joke that, oh, we're going to play Angela's favorite game. But like every week it is true that it is my favorite game in that moment. I think the game that is my absolute favorite is called Five Things. And the reason I love Five Things is that it's got like this upbeat little song, and it can be applied to just about anything. So we use it when we're wanting to talk about five things that we're grateful for, or we want to do it just like straight up improv style and like come up with like five cars or five colors, or five things that we shouldn't say on Progressive HR Live, which we're not going to like do that version of it. I'm just saying that there's many different ways to do it. And I also like it because it's a great warm up, and it's also a way that everyone can participate at the same time, because improv, we have each other's backs. It's something that backstage we always say right before we go on stage, and it reminds us that we are there for one another. The thing that I love maybe the most about improv is that it's an ensemble. It's what's good for the ensemble is good for the individual, and we support one another, and we have each other's backs, and we try to make each other look good, not about competing. And because we have each other's backs, we all count together. So if we were going to do five things that we're grateful for, I would say, I'm really grateful that I met you. And then everyone would say one. And then I would say, I'm really grateful that I'm having like a really good hair day today, like two. And then when we get to five, we all do this little song that goes five things. Five things, five things, five things, five things. And it's silly. And we feel silly doing it. And on Zoom, when we're live, we sound great. We do it together. On Zoom, it sounds terrible. We are not in sync. It's awful, and we still do it, and we embrace that imperfection. And I think that's why that is my favorite game. Mostly because we usually do it with gratitude, but I can apply it to anything.
Yeah. So my favorite game, I have two. My favorite first one is 165. And for those that don't know 165, it's a really funny, you just be yourself. It's okay if you make a mistake. And that's kind of what improv is about, is helping you become comfortable with failure, helping you become comfortable with mistakes. So helping you, be more the authentic you. So 165 is like a joke. It's like, okay, so 165 blanks walk into a bar. The bartender says, we don't serve 165 blanks. And 165 blanks say blank. And so you just try to like make it like all like this really interesting metaphor and crazy. And if you get it wrong, it's okay. The funniness is that you're like, oh, darn, I got it wrong, or, oh, darn, that didn't make sense. It could get a little raunchy, but, or it can also be really funny. Like my favorite is like 165 HR managers walk into a bar. Bartender says 100, we don't serve 165 HR managers. 165 HR managers says, okay, well then I'm writing you up. So, or that's against policy.
That could lead to corrective action up to and including termination.
Yeah, something funny like that. That's okay. We're not human anyway. So something silly and funny and probably having absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about. So going back to. So why are we talking about virtual improv? We are talking about virtual improv and progressive HR because it's about creating empathic workplaces. As Angela said, it's about being a team. It's about understanding our authenticity, about understanding who we are, and being okay with making mistakes. And obviously in year 2020, being resilient and being okay with being uncertain. So virtual improv is a great way for anyone to help them help them do what, Angela? Help them be authentic,
I feel like improv just helps me in life in general. And because I think the first lesson I really learned with improv was embracing imperfection. And I, joke that I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I we wouldn't have a website at my company if it was up to me, because it still wouldn't be perfect enough. And I love our website. Our website designers have done an amazing job. I took a year to write. I don't even like telling people this because they think it's a joke, but it took me a year to finish writing the blog about imperfection, because it can really stifle us. And improv was the first place that I was really encouraged to be imperfect, and to have that be okay and encouraged, and where I was taught that there are no mistakes, there's only gifts. I really liked that aspect of improv. It was the only place I really knew that it was okay and that it was safe and celebrated. Because I would go off, we would do our game, and I would be off on the sidelines while someone else was up trying to like redo it or like try to do it more perfect. And I remember my teacher being like, stop doing that. Like, it's over. It's okay. Like, and I remember her telling me the very first piece of feedback I got was stop trying to be so perfect. And I remember it was like, oh, like, I feel like that's really timely life advice, not just like my life needed to hear that, not just my improv self.
Yeah, you just I was watching the live stream on the other computer. You just got a bunch of likes, like a bunch of just hearts and likes came as you were saying that, how, and I think we need to hear that. We need to hear we don't need to be perfect.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I mean, I am like literally one day at a time on this perfection thing, especially since I just started graduate school. I was like, I have to get straight A's. And I was like, I'm training to be a therapist. And I was like, I have never asked my therapist what grade she got. I've never asked her to send me a paper that she wrote about a subject. And like, I really have to remind myself that it's like no one has asked on our comments, like, could you do me a favor and send me your transcript from school? It's not about that. It's about how we show up in life. Like, we're expected to know stuff. We don't judge doctors on we expect them to know how to be doctors. We judge them on their bedside manner. And it's the same with all professions. We expect people to know what they're doing. It's the way that we show up in life and the energy that we give off and the way that we treat other people that matters.
Can you repeat that? There was like a bit of a technical glitch in the audio there, but if you can, I mean, I don't expect you to repeat it perfectly.
Thank you. Because I don't do perfect. I don't know. I said something like, I don't know. I was just in the moment. That's another great thing about improv, is just being in the moment. I know that for me, being able to show up imperfectly helps me to show up authentically and be present, because we don't judge people on what they know. We judge them on how they treat us.
How they show up. So
that's like the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you also said we don't judge doctors on their knowledge that's in their brains. We judge them on their bedside manner, how they show up to us. Yes.
Right. Yeah. And it's the same with us. It took me a long time to realize that, because I thought that just because I did my job well, that was enough. But I think we've all met someone, and the talk that I gave for Disrupt HR about the first one we did, Empathic Cocktail, which Corrine named, by the way. I'm going to throw that out there. That was her and her name. Is that we can be good at our jobs and be a jerk, and no one wants to work with someone who's a jerk and good at their job. I'd rather work with someone who's like mediocre at best and kind and easy to work with. So, yeah.
So I just wanted to say about being imperfect. It's like your mic is going in and out a little bit. So I don't know if it's when you move back and forth and the cord kind of pops. So it's not that I don't want you to stop your non-verbal cues.
I will be aware of that. Thank you.
So what is this is one of the most attractive things about empathic workplaces. What does empathic workplace believe?
So thank you for asking me that. This is something that I wrote before we even really knew what we were selling. And the reason that I wrote this first is because it gave me some guidelines and guideposts almost for the company that I wanted to be a part of, because I've worked plenty of places where I didn't feel valued and I didn't feel like I mattered, and sometimes was even told that I was replaceable. And I didn't want that to be the case for what we were building with Empathic Workplace. So the first thing is empathy. And for me, empathy is about being able to show up with someone else and feel with them through something. I might not know exactly what someone is going through, but I can show up for them and go through it with them. We also believe in connection. For me, connection, it's everything. I want to feel connected to the work I'm doing. I want to feel connected to the people that I am working with. And I want to be connected to the company. So we believe in connection. We also believe in authenticity. And when I want to say like 27 years old, so like a long time ago, I wrote what I wanted at work. What did I want in a workplace? And one of the things I wrote was that I wanted to be able to be myself and to be able to, I don't know if I had the words then to be able to show up authentically, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to be and be appreciated for that and have that be okay. And also emotional intelligence is another thing that we believe. And emotional intelligence kind of goes along with no one really cares what you know and no one cares what your grades were. If you show up like a toddler and respond the same way a toddler does to criticism or show up the way a toddler does to conflict, that's not great. So we put a lot of emphasis on emotional intelligence because that matters just as much as book smarts. We also believe in improv, obviously.
Yeah.
For us, improv is the way that we help companies create and maintain an empathic workplace culture. So we teach all of these things. We are these things. And improv is the way that we practice because it's a little bit more than just reading a PowerPoint presentation. It's a little bit more than just knowing what to do. It's being able to put into practice those skills. And improv games gives us a way to practice that and not have it be during our review. It's a place for us to practice conflict and not have it happen in the break room or with our supervisors. So we also believe, in addition to improv, is imperfection. And that, I feel like I wrote that just for me in a way to make sure that I knew that it was okay for me to be imperfect because it is so seductive to want to do everything perfectly. And the last two things is trust and intention. And I believe that trust is built in it's the same thing I believe with workplace culture. It's built in everyday moments and it's challenged during the difficult ones. And trust is, it's everything. If something gets messed up, I trust my company or I trust the people that I work with, I know that I'm going to get through it. I feel safe even though things are turbulent. And 2020 is the example of that. If people didn't trust their companies, they spent most of their time watching their backs. But if they trusted their company, they trusted their coworkers, or even trusted their spouses or trusted their partners, we knew that we could get through it. And one of the reasons that I wrote about intention, we believe in intention, is I didn't want people to call us just because they needed to check a box. They needed to do the diversity training or they needed to just check the box. I wanted people to work with that believed in the same things that I believed, that wanted these things. And it has really helped us because we've worked with some amazing companies that found us because they Googled empathy and investigation. They Googled the things that we believe in.
So going back to CFI, what does CFI stand for?
I am a certified forensic interviewer. My background is in workplace investigations, and certified forensic interviewer is kind of like you go to accounting school, but then you still have to get your CPA. Nurses go to nursing school, but they still have to take the boards. That's kind of the CFI. It's the professional designation for professional interviewers. And I would say it means that I basically know how to do every type of interview, or don't freak out everyone out there, interrogation out there, and for any type of situation. So I took a test that says I know how to do that, and have also put it into practice. And I think now my skills in interviewing and making an environment where people are comfortable telling the truth, I, instead of using it for just workplace investigations, we use it now for every phase of the experience in our workplaces. So whether it's our job interview, whether it's a coaching conversation, whether it's a termination conversation, that we're approaching that with empathy and with dignity for everyone.
Yeah, and I think we really need to flip the script on a lot of the interviews and the investigations that are done in on both sides. Flipping the script on both sides
Yeah.
is, we talk about having trust, and we talk about having empathy and telling the truth. And pillar one of progressive HR is that we're all human. We all make mistakes. It's okay to admit that we made a mistake, and to be able to have the experience of admitting that you made a mistake with somebody who is a trained, empathetic investigator or interview is just completely different. It'll change your mindset forever, wanting to, for lack of better words, lie again.
Right. And we have to trust our management, and we have to trust our leaders. We have to feel safe telling the truth, because if we tell the truth, and then it's like a little kid, if you tell a little kid, like, tell me the truth and there won't be any consequences, and then you're like, go to your room, like, that's not, if we're doing that equivalent of that in the workplace, and then people aren't going to feel safe coming to us when they mess up. We've all messed up at work. Every single one of us. I don't know anyone who's done work perfect. I need to be able to trust going to my business partners and saying I messed up. I need to be able to trust my manager that I and say that I messed something up, and that they're going to help me, and that they're going to support me, and that they're not going to judge me, and that they're not going to push me away.
Mm-hmm. And the same goes for any type of work, with your clients, with your customers, with your peers, with anyone. Just admitting, hey, you know what, I messed up. I'm so sorry. This is a great learning opportunity. We don't get those opportunities if we can't admit that we messed up.
Right. And I think that as leaders, we have to demonstrate our learning experiences with messing up, and being able to say, here's how I messed it up once, and here's how I fixed it. And to when we can share that story, we make it safe for other people to say, oh, I messed up too.
One thing we did at Improv is that when you made a mistake, everybody cheered and yelled, and they were like, yes, it's a mistake. All right. Woo!
Those are the fun parts.
Yeah, you got better cheers for the mistakes than you did for hitting the punchline.
Right. Those are the funny things. When we're in a game and someone says something they're not supposed to, that's when we all giggle. That's when the laughter happens. And it's also a real teachable moment, the way that we respond to things. Because I'll say that to the group. I'm like, can you imagine if the way I responded was like, that's not the direction I gave. Do it again. Like, I don't even like giving that example because it brings the mood down. So that we choose the way that we respond to things. I can't control anything really. The only thing I control is how I respond to things. And that's what matters.
So in a now virtual world, as we used to do improv together as a troupe, as an ensemble. We used to be able to have the non-verbal cues, the togetherness of it. And now we have to learn a completely different way. And a lot of the focus this year has been on how do we improve communications as in teams and virtually and remotely. And I believe my feeling is that improv really does help with that. So my question to you is, how can improv help us with virtual communications?
It's a practice. Being able to trust ourselves when we don't know what the answer is, when we don't know how it's going to go. Improv is practice for that. And one other thing about virtual communication is I can see myself, and I think that there is something about that, being okay seeing ourselves and being okay with how we look and how we're showing up. I know some people that will turn their cameras off. I don't feel 100% safe turning my camera off because I feel like I'm going to do something weird and I scratch my nose in a weird way, and that's going to be the moment that the camera freezes. So there's that. So improv helps us with virtual communication because it's a again we're on Zoom. We can see ourselves on Zoom, and it's a way to practice being silly and messing up and having that be okay and celebrated. When we practice that in improv, we're better able to show up in life and in those virtual communications for like when it's a higher stakes conversation.
And so our audience has been really silent. We have a lot of people watching, but nobody has any questions.
People.
So, hey, people, if you're out there, ask us any questions you have. It doesn't matter if it has anything to do with what we're talking about. Yeah, so any questions that you have for Angela, please throw them in the comments. And
I'm not going to make you improvise. Don't worry. No. I feel like that's people like, I'll go in and they're like, don't make me do anything. Is there going to be an audience? Like there's a lot of, I'll walk into an event back when we walked into events in person and people like pull me aside and they're like, I am really freaking out about this. Like, please don't make me do anything. I was like, it's going to be fine. I'm not going to let you fail. Like, I'm not here to make you look bad. Like, I'm here to make you look good and support you. And that's, I think, another part of improv that I really love is that we really do have each other's backs. And I'm not going to let you fail. You know, when there's someone who's brand new at improv, our job as the experienced improvisers is to make them look good, to make them feel welcome and comfortable and a part of the ensemble, because that makes all of us look good.
So what are the rules of improv? So audience, if you know some of the rules of improv, let us know. Let join in. Okay, how many rules of improv? There's like 8 rules of improv.
I am imperfectly sure. I don't know how many there are.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find kind of funny is like there are rules of improv, but like improv doesn't really have rules. But
there's like some foundations. There's some foundations. You know,
you it's like a code of conduct for improv because really we can't use the word rule. That's just like too formal.
Right, because then I don't want to follow them.
Right. So code of conduct. Here comes the comment. This is, let's see here. What is the most helpful skill to have to be good at improv? So, okay, not a comment about the rules, but a good question. Thank you, Esmara. And Esmara is joining us from the UK. I believe Wales, I think. I can't remember exactly where in Cardiff in Wales. Hopefully, okay. Right. If not, it's okay. I don't have to be perfect.
Don't have to be perfect.
No.
So much more fun not being perfect. And so this is something that people think that, I think I mentioned this earlier, they think that you have to be funny, and that's not it. In fact, those people are kind of annoying. So the most helpful skill is playing it real. And here's when I learned this. I was in my level C class. It was like the 3rd class I ever took. And it was day 1. And we had to play ourselves as a character, which is easy because I already know how to be me. And the teacher put us into like awkward situations. And I remember mine being, I'm in an empty movie theater. I'm sitting by myself and someone walked in. So my scene partner walked in and sat in the seat right next to me. And we just had to like be ourselves. And those were the funniest scenes by far that we did. Maybe in my entire experience of improv, we just played it real. So the most helpful skill to be good at improv, I'm going to say, is playing it real. What would you really say if someone sat down next to you in a movie theater? What would you really say if someone sat down next to you on a bench while you're waiting for the bus and the bus just drove by both of you? What would you say if you went into a Starbucks and someone said, like, I am in love with you? Like, how would you really respond? So I'm going to say playing it real.
So I think that's a good question. So playing it real right now. It's like, yeah. So like if someone sat down next to me and said, I'm in love with you, I'd be like, oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. That's about it.
Right. I like you.
I think I like that. Yeah. Yeah. You're in a good kindness mood today.
Right.
Thank you.
Like, what would you do if, your scene partner was about to say something really embarrassing on Progressive HR Live? You'd be like, we are live right now.
You would interrupt them and say, don't say
Interrupt
that.
them, right, and be like, maybe save that for the end or never. So play it real. It's so one of the things that Lisa always says. Lisa's my business partner, amazing business partner, and very dear friend. She said it's always safe to make I statements, and that's actually a therapy thing too. Making I statements. It's always safe to say I think or I feel, because it is. I think or I feel. That's our experience.
That's a
So
fact.
play it real.
Yeah. So back to the guidelines of code of conduct. Yes. So if anyone who's listening, we've got about 10 people watching right now. What are the rules? What are the code of conduct of improv? So yes, and. So everything is yes, and. Somebody says something you don't necessarily agree with. Yes, and something.
Right. And I know that people like kind of freak out about this. They're like, well, if someone told you to jump off a cliff, like, okay, in real life, maybe not. In improv, you can explore that. So, and it's more about saying yes to the reality of the situation. So if I was like, Kareen, I really am so happy that you brought me here to the moon to celebrate our friendship. And if you were like, this is Jupiter, get it right. Like, all right, that's not, we agree to the reality of the situation, because that's more fun. That's where the magic happens. So in our real life, applying yes and is, I hear you and here are my thoughts. It's a way to acknowledge the reality of someone else and still hold boundaries, and to explore, and so to make sure that every voice is heard. We might not act on every idea. We're going to make sure that every idea gets heard. It's a really great experience in business to apply yes and see what happens when we know we're not going to be shut down.
And yes, and when you start, it's kind of hard because we're so used to being, saying no and being counter. We're so used to thinking of our egos and listening. Another more of it is listening to your person and
Right.
agreeing with them.
Saying no is usually out of fear or control. Mm-hmm. It's usually one of those two things. We're afraid of what's going to happen, or it's not my idea, so I don't want to do it. It's usually what that is.
Yeah, and I transferred that over into my writing. So I've stopped saying the BUT word, but, and always say yes and. So X, Y, Z, P, D, Q, rather than but, I say yes and this. Yes. And here's another one is that Angela have instilled in me is that we shouldn't. We can say could instead of should.
Yeah. So this is how this was taught to me. I was told to close my eyes and to, if I had to do a signal for the word should, what would that look like? And then everyone opens their eyes and everyone's going like this, pointing at them, you should. And if we close our eyes again and then say, what would the gesture be for could, it's open. And it's a lot easier to accept that we could do something than we should. The word should has a lot of judgment. A lot of judgment. And the word could is more about opportunities. And I've been taught to remember that for myself as well, especially as we're going into the new year and like New Year's resolutions I'm really not into. I'm more about like themes for the year. Like my theme is gratitude, or my theme is authenticity, or being present, or resilience, or like what if, man. And letting go of I should go to the gym, or I should lose weight, or I should all the things that we think we should do. If we replace that with the word could, it takes a lot of the judgment off of ourselves.
Yeah. So yes, and could, listening, supportive. What are the other guidelines?
I really love I got your back. Having each other's backs. Another thing is not always putting it onto our scene partners, that we take responsibility for part of the scene as well, and making the other person look good. And like one of the ways that I see that played out in scenes is one scene partner will just ask a bunch of questions and not, which is, it's fine, we learn. Making sure that we're contributing ideas. And I think in a business sense, that is, give me solutions, don't just give me problems. So in an improv scene, that would look like a whole bunch of questions without contributing an idea. And that's the thing about improv, is that it's, when we get good at these skills in improv, we can show up differently in our lives. They really are just life skills.
So we could turn around and take these guidelines, this code of conduct, and use it on our Zoom that we have in an hour. So, looking at
Absolutely.
how, rather than creating, saying could rather than should, yes and rather than but, listening. And then I think I think most Zoom meetings are pretty dry. So how can we make Zoom more fun? How can people be more fun on Zoom? Like, how can we show that funness that is part of who we are as humans?
I have found, first of all, we do Zoom on improv, so I feel like we're always going to be more fun. So I feel like every meeting is going to be boring in comparison to playing improv games for an hour and a half. I think that letting go of the perfection of it is what makes it more fun. Being able to, when we are present, that's a lot more fun to be a part of that Zoom meeting than okay, and now I'm gonna okay. There's a certain amount of planning that helps. It's not like you and I are just winging this. We have an idea of the flow that we want to have, and we left enough room to improv and to be present and to just be in this space with one another. And hopefully that is why people are staying, watching it instead of, playing on their phones. Excuse me. And being able to talk and drink water.
Yeah, when you cough, drink water. So what are some of the games that you play on Zoom? What are some of the improv games that work on Zoom?
We are constantly learning that. Some of the games that don't work is when, well, let me talk about what does work, because I'll be positive. Most of them work. And I kind of like Zoom in a way because I can see everyone really easily. Like, whereas I'm within a circle, I can't see these two people next to me. But in Zoom, I could see everyone. And so many of the games are still working because the communication rules are the same. So saying like, one of the energy passes are very common. Like I have this energy of gratitude, and by saying your name, Corinne, I'm going to pass you the gratitude, and like the nonverbal communication, it's still the same. Do I miss in person? Absolutely. Do I miss shows? So much. The skills that we're practicing are the same. Some things we have to tweak a little bit, and I really love that Zoom now lets us move people around so that when something's going in order, like when we play one word at a time, we have to adjust a little bit, and maybe a smaller group, or maybe we do things in breakout rooms. But we try to mimic real life as much as possible. Zip, zap, zop is one of the things that is just not working on.
I'm laughing, audience, because that's the one I was going to say that you can't do.
Yeah,
You have to point. So you say zip.
Right. I'm like, zip,
like yeah.
Where's that? If I'm like Korean zip, it's just not it.
No, because
it's just not. I look forward to a good zip zap zop session in person, but it is just not working. Not working. We started the improv therapy group at Empathic Workplace before the pandemic, and looking back at our notes before, I was like, oh, remember all of these amazing things that we used to be able to do, and hopefully 2021 will be the year that we can we can do them in person again. And if not, we'll still be playing on Zoom. We're not going to ditch Zoom. It's been amazing to be able to have people from all over the world be able to participate in a way that wasn't possible before. People used to fly in to train with Lisa or I, and now they're able to show up on Zoom calls every week, and it's just what we're doing now.
I personally think everybody should learn a little bit of improv. It's, it's helped me so much. Going back to the beginning of what I was saying is like, talk about imperfection. I just looked into my ring light and I had like flashes in front of my eyes for a minute there. It's really helped me embrace that side of myself that I can laugh at, and that is not like what is the word I'm like, not overly produced. So
yeah, and that's what we want to see. We want to, someone who's like got it all together and doing it perfect. Like, whatever, man. I want to see the human. I want to connect with that person. And the thing that it's given me more than anything else, improv, is trusting that I can show up in a conversation, especially a difficult one. Because I don't know if you guys are like me, but I used to like rehearse conversations in my head, in the car, in the shower. I'm a great arguer in my own head in the shower, but I would like have these like rehearsed conversations. Now I find when I start to do that, I will tell myself, trust that you can show up in this conversation and that your values will guide you. That I'll be able to show up, because otherwise I'd leave and I'd be like, oh, I should have said this or I should have said this. And that's my approach going into it. That was more about me wanting to show up and be right, or like show them. And now I show up differently and really trust that I'll be okay in that conversation. And that doesn't mean I don't go in without notes. I'll have like, I want to make sure that I cover these things, especially if it's important to me. And there's the end, being able to trust myself to be present in that conversation.
Similar to you, I used to ruminate. So I'd have a conversation with somebody and I would choose to respond what I thought was the most appropriate way to respond, even though it maybe wasn't what me or I maybe saw in a movie somewhere that somebody responded that way. And then it'd go away and I constantly ruminate about, because it would affect me. It would affect my core being because I wasn't being myself.
Right.
And that, built onto this hill of like fear, and built onto this hill of not being the person that people expected me to be. And once I just started saying what I felt and what I thought, because I was able to do that, practice that through improv, that fear dissipated, that rumination dissipated. Have so much more confidence. A lot of people look at me, to be honest, a lot of people look at me like, oh, look at her. She goes, she's like so confident. She's like, nah, this is years in the making.
Right. So, right. And that's where the trust in ourselves comes into play. And I don't know anyone who's like, you know what I really like? Fake people. I love it when someone just shows up as like a character version of themselves instead of them. It's definitely what I prefer. Like because we can't connect with that. It feels like distant and feels like, I guess, and then we put it on us. Like, I guess I'm not safe enough for them to show up realistically. Like, we don't want to be friends with a fake version of someone. We want, like, that's what people love about us, is that we are us. And it's okay. We're also not for everyone. I don't like everybody. I don't expect everyone to like me either. And being okay with that. Like, it's okay. People don't have to agree with what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. It's okay.
And then that also puts the onus on us to judge them. And when we judge, what do you mean we judge other people? We judge ourselves. So
totally.
Thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We judge people on what we are vulnerable to. Like I don't judge parents because I'm not a parent. Like, that looks hard. so hard. And I don't know why that kid's having a meltdown, but like, I hope for you that it ends soon, I guess. Like, that's why I didn't have them. Parents judge other parents like so harshly.
Mhm.
And I guess I never really realized that, but but I'm also not vulnerable to being a parent. Like when I have my nieces and nephews, like I don't really care what. It's funny actually when I'm with my nieces. With my niece and I used to go to Dairy Queen, and we used to laugh because people weren't sure if I was just a terrible parent or a really cool aunt. And we used to like joke later on, we're like, "Did you see what that person like? How that person looked at you?" And I was like, "You don't have to eat dinner, right? Dairy Queen's enough." And like people would turn around, and I'm like, "What?" So we would like it. We would enjoy that to ourselves. Yeah. Like, is Dairy Queen enough for dinner? You don't need like nutrients, right?
Yeah.
Or like my nephew, we would go to Panera and I'm like, brownies are okay for breakfast. And he's like, yeah. And like people would like turn around and like look at me. I'm like,
It has whole grains in them, right?
no.
Chocolate has calcium. It's got
And
milk,
like he's
right?
a kid. Like it's not, this one brownie's not going to ruin his whole life.
Yeah, and if you put nuts in the brownie, then you've got another food group in there. So it's
Apparently,
like you're taking care of the 3 food groups.
obviously.
Oh my gosh. So we're coming up on our last 15 minutes. That went really, really fast. So I want to know what advice that you have for our audience.
I want to say to trust yourself. I know that that's not easy. I know it's not easy. When we understand our values and we know what's important to us, it makes it a lot easier to navigate this world. So trust yourself. You're going to be okay. Listen to yourself. When we betray ourselves, that's when we suffer the most. When we don't listen.
And what resources do you have on Empathic Workplace, the website?
So much. On our Empathic Workplace website, I'm a big fan of our blog, just because that's the place that we share our experiences. There's a couple of videos on there. One of them, well, the 2 Disrupt HR videos are on there. So one's 5 minutes on talking about Empathy Cocktail, and that when we tell our stories, that we release oxytocin and cortisol, and our bodies literally prepare us to feel with someone else. So there's a little bit on that, and how do we tell our stories and like not be a jerk. And then there's Faking It Helps No One, which Corrine also helped me name. I'm just going to give her full credit for it. I'm like, I don't know what to call this. And so I tell her my ideas and she's like, I think go with that. I'm like, okay. That's how my talk grenade was. How, you know, practicing actually using a virtual reality has helped me to practice difficult conversations. And there's also another video that I did at the Loss Prevention Research Council on empathy, and it was a group of loss prevention professionals and the climate of workplace violence and how to prevent workplace violence, and telling a whole bunch of like hardcore loss prevention people that empathy really is the way. Not exactly easy. It is being able, I don't know people are happy in the workplace and don't do workplace violence because they trust their companies are going to hear them and listen to them. Mad people don't try to hurt the company or one another.
No. And then what are your predictions for this lovely year of 2021?
I predict that. Predictions for myself. I know that I'm going to be super overwhelmed with school and that I'm probably going to have 2 meltdowns, one in about April, one in like November, towards the end of my semesters. I I think that it's going to be a lot more of the same. I don't think that there's going to be any real huge swing. I think I think that we've seen, and even if there is a whole bunch more stuff that happens, this is the human experience. We're still going to respond like humans. We're going to respond with fear and uncertainty, and it's probably going to be a lot more of the same reactions, whatever side you're on. Their sides. It's not any. I don't think we're going to see anything we haven't seen before.
One of the questions that was asked on the last Progressive HR Live, as Mara Cosme asked Dr. Charlie, do you think that we are feeling empathy burnout? So I want to ask you the same question. Do you think our empathy is going to improve in 2021, or are we going to have an empathy burnout?
I really hope that we don't. If we can't have an appreciation for the fact that we are all responding to things that we've never had to respond to before, and that we're all going to do it differently, and some of us are really going to struggle, and some of us are going to thrive, and some of us are going to break, and some of us are going to develop new addictions. And to not have empathy for one another going through difficult situations that's really devastating. To think that people are just going to have had it with feeling for one another that's a really scary thought. Because one of the things that we do now at my company is we call it a mental health check-in. How's your week been? Because 2020, was god awful for me personally, for most of us, just awful. And feeling safe enough, feeling safe enough to share when it was hard, and know that was going to be met with empathy instead of judgment, is what got me through this year. I mean, that is what got me through this year. And if we're feeling empathy burnout for others, chances are we are feeling it for ourselves. And maybe if that's happening to us personally, being a little kinder to ourselves, giving ourselves a break, doing something for just us, whatever that looks like, and remembering that this, and not just during a pandemic, but like, life is hard. The human experience is really hard, and really believing that people are doing the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy.
And I also think this is another reason why people should do improv, because it does give you that neuroplasticity of your brain. It helps you understand uncomfortable situations. I'm just going to read this from an article that I was reading about mental health benefits of improv. Yeah. Improv training emphasizes the mutually positive embrace of other people's ideas and responses, which can rapidly diffuse the anxiety that is an undeniable part of stepping into the unknown, no matter how benign. The openness and receptivity generated by positive experiences expands the field of awareness that enhances our ability to make connections between ideas and make meaning of things. This translates into greater adaptability and resilience in the face of stress, and receptivity to ideas that we can choose to shape our lives in new ways.
I mean, she said it, folks.
I didn't say it. Somebody else did.
You read it, folks.
I read it.
The neuroplasticity of improv is, we call it brain yoga. We don't go to yoga just once and now we're good at it. It's the same thing with anything. It's a practice. Meditation. We think that, we meditate once and we're like, well, my mind isn't blank. Well, it's not going to be. It's a practice to get to that place. With improv, it's a practice to listen. It's a practice to support someone else and let go of control. I mean, that was a big one for me with improv, letting go of control. Got a little control issue. It's a place to, and like low stakes. It's not that serious. It is just a game. But to have those skills, the same way stretching, it helps us. Yoga helps us with posture in our regular life, our regular legs. The same way these skills help us to engage in a conversation where knowing we don't always have to be right. It makes us more tolerable as people.
I remember from your empathy cocktail, I don't know if it was empathy cocktail or faking it helps no one, when you say like, you can't just wear yoga pants and say that you do yoga.
Yeah, faking it helps no one.
Yeah. Faking it helps no one.
Right, which is the same thing. I can't just like say empathy matters and then judge you on your decisions. It's the same. Like I can't just like read a self-help book and be like, I absorbed it. I am different. We have to. It's a practice to change. We have to make a different decision. We have to do something different, and that is not easy. I mean, our brain is literally wired to keep doing the same thing over and over again. That's why, like 15 minutes without our phone, we're like, "Where's that thing?" Our body's like programmed to like go get it, like play on it. Like, where's my dopamine hit? Doing something different is hard, and improv creates those new neural pathways to try something different. It's like walking through the snow. If we're the first one to walk through the snow, it is not easy. But if we follow our own footprints the next time, it's a little bit easier. Thank you, Gary. I'm not sure which thing you liked, but I like that you liked it.
You liked a lot of things, yeah.
Allows us to, it's a little bit easier the next time we go through the snow again. And if I've done it like back and forth like 40 times, eventually I have to shovel, just the way I'm going. But if I need a new route, it's gonna be harder. And improv is a place to do that first walk in the snow, so that in life, if we're asking for a raise or telling our partner that we didn't feel like we were heard, to be able to show up differently in those conversations. It's not easy. It's not easy.
And then Gary said too, feeling safe enough to know that we will encounter empathy as opposed to judgment. I agree with that.
Yes. I mean, that's something I used to be so judgmental, and it's still hard not to be. Knowing that judgment, if I'm judging someone, it's about me. It's not about them. And it's a lot safer. I know, Green, you and I have had, I consider you a friend, a good friend. And, we've had some really rough conversations, just, things that are happening in our lives. And knowing that I felt safe enough to, excuse me, I wasn't crying. I'm fine, everyone.
It's okay. Dr. Charlie and I cried on the last live. So.
And if I wasn't, I would show up and just cry. Even though my makeup is on point right now. But knowing that, I felt safe to tell you like what was happening in my life, and safe enough that when you asked me like, what do I need? And that we reciprocated that for one another through some really difficult moments. It was that safety that made it possible to be honest about what was really happening, instead of feeling like I had to have it all together for you.
Thank you. And I truly appreciate you in my life. And I appreciate Gary. He wrote a book here for us. So I think that it's really important for each of us to get out of the mindset of telling others that things are okay. In fact, things are not okay. That's right.
Right.
Be real about it. It will be important to remember that we can find a safe zone where we can find empathy, not just merely sympathy. And in the midst of challenging moments, it's going to take a bit of a paradigm shift. Empathy will always matter. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah. I am so on board with that. Being able to say, like, how are things going? I even put it into practice with clients. Like, we're doing a mental health check-in. Where's everyone at right now? And I'm a big fan of the mental health check-in. Big fan, because it gives me permission to also tell people I'm not great right now. I'm at my breaking point. I cried yesterday because but being okay with it, things not being okay, because like there's a whole lot not okay right now, a whole lot, and to pretend that everything is okay, like we all know it's not.
It's okay to be not okay.
Right.
So. And on that note, we're going to end our Progressive HR Live because we went over time already.
Oh.
That's okay. So real quick, next show coming up is actually tomorrow with Simon Parsons, Growth Mindset. And then through January to February, we have Emma Roloff, Digital Transformation, as Mark Hosny. You heard me mention her a few times. Systems Thinking, Why Can't Lau, Remote Work, and Beth Ridley, Digital Wellness. Thank
Awesome
you.
lineup.
Yeah, I know. And that's just January. So thank you, Resourceful Humans, for tuning in today. And thank you, Angela, so much for joining me at the first of the year. Happy 2021. Okay, everybody, signing off. Having a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. I almost said Thursday because I thought it was Thursday. So bye, everyone. Happy day, Resourceful Humans.